So a few things before you start your practice that are important to note. So firstly, you want to make sure you've got a set amount of time set aside for your practice so that you're not going to be distracted or feel rushed. So you want to know how long you're going to practice for, and maybe even set a timer. That's a really useful tool to have, just so that you're not constantly having to check the time. Okay. Secondly, you want to be comfortable, so loose clothing, especially around the waist and the chest, so that you can breathe freely and just be basically really comfortable. You might want to have some water to hand because it's very purifying and detoxifying, and you might need to take little sips, especially if there's lots of breathing or mantra going on. And also after your practice, you'd want to drink a lot of water. So you want something comfortable to sit on. A lot of people tend to use a sheepskin because it gives you a little bit more padding than a typical yoga mat. You want to have your cushions and your props available, whatever you usually need for yourself. You want a blanket to hand, something warm to wrap up in after your practice, because you can increase your body temperature quite considerably and then it will drop off quickly during the relaxation. So again, you want to be in a safe space to do your practice. You don't want to feel like you're imposing on somebody, or like somebody might be watching you or anything like that. So you want to create a safe space for yourself at home, and preferably a room that you can just be yourself in is the best thing, but we don't always have that, so you might need to make arrangements. And so you can do your practice inside or outside. It's a very different experience. I find doing my practice inside, my focus automatically goes inward very deeply and very quickly. And when I'm practicing outside, it's much more elemental. So it can also be very deep and beautiful, but there's more awareness of the elements, and it can be very beautiful. But if you are outside, you want to make sure you're not in strong direct sunlight, because that can dehydrate you, and also it can just disturb your focus and your concentration a bit. So that's important. You don't want to be in strong direct sun and heat, so you want to find somewhere a bit cooler. I mean, it's sunny at the moment, but it's not very warm. I mean, it hardly gets warm enough here in the UK to warrant not being in the sunshine. Yeah, and you again, that thing of not being, you want to feel comfortable. So if you are practicing outside, you want to be in a place where there's not many people walking past, really, that might find what you're doing peculiar or something. So you want to be in as much of a private space as you can. But it just depends, like where you are and what you're doing. Like sometimes I've done my practice in a park or up on the common where there's lots of dog walkers and people passing. But generally I've found it not to be a problem, and people might stop and be a bit curious, but they generally respect what I'm doing, particularly if it's in a class environment and there's a few of us. But that's just something to be mindful of. So yeah, so that's just sort of your spatial things. And again, we want to tune in to set the space, set our intentions, and just make a separation between the chatter of the mind and all the worries and concerns, and then just set a clear space for your practice and the work, setting a clear intention. And I've got a separate tuning in video which you can watch tuning out for closing the session. You really, first of all, most important thing is just taking note of your state on all levels. Just noticing, scanning yourself. How am I feeling on a physical level? How am I feeling on an emotional level? How am I feeling on a mental level? And you take these things into account. You're also taking into account any pain in the body, any discomfort, any tender areas or particularly tight areas. So you don't never ever want to overdo anything. Always start on the side of caution and gentleness and slowness. Okay, sometimes it might be that your energy is low, and you just you're just not going to have the energy for a huge practice. So you just come, you be quiet, you sit. Even just coming with your pure intention and sitting, something really good and powerful is happening there. And you're always working within your range of energy, your range of comfort, and ability. Okay, so if you've got a particularly sore knee, sore back, sore wrist, you take account for this, you move accordingly, you adapt things. And it might be that it's quite obvious to you how you want to adapt it, but it might not be, and we find a plan. We'll find a way to work with your particular restrictions. And it's not really about how fast we're going, or deep we're going, or strongly we're going into the postures. It's about the quality of our consciousness that we're bringing to our experience. Okay, so you don't push yourself. Don't push yourself to go all the way, and where you might risk sort of overdoing it a little bit. Okay, and through your practice, you really want to be developing a relationship with your body and a discernment for discomfort and the different types of discomfort. So there's discomfort where you're actually injuring yourself, so like as in overstretching, but then there's discomfort which is just, it's about going out of our comfort zone in some way, and a lot of the yoga is going to, we're holding postures for a long time, for example, holding your hands out to the side like this. It's not, we're not like straining particularly, but over time it will get tiring and it will get uncomfortable, and we'll want to hunch over, draw the shoulders in, bend the arms, and there's a sort of a contraction of energy that's happening. And really that's a kind of a challenge. That's a kind of stepping out of our comfort zone. So we want to rest into that and expand into that, lengthen, let the energy move, soften into it. Instead of becoming rigid and tense and contracted, we want to soften and extend and open into that, so it becomes more easeful and effortless. And that comes with time and practice. But you don't go for a ridiculous length of time. You build it up gradually. Okay, and it also takes time to develop that discernment of the kind of a positive expansion of your comfort zone and the challenge of that, which has a kind of a quality of discomfort, to it. So that's one. And then the other one, which is really pushing ourselves too far, way out of our comfort zone in a way where you're obviously doing yourself some harm. And this is something we really want to avoid. And it's something that at the end of the day you're responsible for, and it's comes with time and practice. So for example, even something like this, you don't want to be raking the legs out too far, or just moving quickly and abruptly and just going over your own limits. So it's not about how far you're going in the posture. So everybody's absolutely completely different. We've got all very different bodies, different energy levels, different restrictions, and we have to work within what our own range of movement, and learn to know it and understand it, so we don't do ourselves injury. So it's not about how far you're moving, it's about the quality of your awareness you're bringing to your experience. So just moving a few inches consciously, mindfully, diligently, fully is orders of magnitude. So even if it looks on the outside like not much is happening, but we're keeping a tall spine, open heart, relaxed soft shoulders, right? So we're bringing all of that awareness into our movement is very different to just going flopping forwards and not really holding the awareness of all the parts and just going and over pushing. So I encourage you to start off with everything really slowly so that you're making sure you're getting the movements, the postures right as best you can, and also so that you get familiar with your body's capability. And then it's also quite amazing to watch over time how that changes and expands. And it happens really quite quickly with the regular practice. So, another thing that's a sort of general application is we do most of the practice with the eyes closed. So this is really to bring our energy and our attention and our focus inwards and to avoid distraction from the outside world. And obviously when you're learning a new practice, you open your eyes in between postures so you can see, so you can take the instructions in and make sure you're doing everything correctly. And then once you've got it, you close your eyes, you carry on with your own practice. And also, especially if you're in a group context, you don't get distracted by this one's doing an amazing downward dog, and it just stops all of that mind chatter and comparison going on, so you're having your own experience. Some postures are an exception to that, and actually you'll have your eyes fully open or a small a fraction open, or maybe opening and closing, but that's it's not the normal situation, and I'd always let you know if that's the case. So mostly the eyes are closed. Really, the work happens in your own daily practice. This is really where you're going to start to see the results affect your life, affect your energy, affect your focus, and really positively affect change in your life. It's in your own personal daily practice. And this is something I'm really wanting to encourage and support with this online resource. Now, if you're in a group context, it's important to note that it's really a sacred space. It's confidential, whatever goes on in there. So obviously, check it's okay to speak to somebody if you bump into them in the street, and obviously you're not sharing anything about anybody else's experience. If you're sharing something, it's from your own experience. So that's just a basic respect and confidentiality. And also everyone's having their own experience, so we want to be quiet, we want to maintain a sacred silence as much as possible, so that we're not disturbing other people, we're respecting their journey. And also we really want to come into quietness and into stillness, and that takes time, and so any sudden sounds will jolt people out of that, and you probably. So really respecting the silence. Also, so it might be, with the Kundalini yoga practice, we're moving a lot of energy, and a lot of dormant energy and stuck energy that might have been, restricted for a long time, and it often can bring up a flow of emotion. So either it could be quite a joyful emotion, or it could be tears, could be grief, sadness, or anger, or anything. It can bring up a lot of emotional content, and I would say that this is quite normal and part of the process, and I would just give yourself permission in some way to let that energy move through you, to move through and release. Okay, so if tears come, let them come. and let them pass. And you want to just be a clear, non-judgmental, kind, loving space for whatever arises. These things, they naturally pass. And again, if you're in a group situation, well, either way, so if you're on your own, in your own space, you want to feel free to be able to let these things pass through as they need to. So if if you're worried about making a noise or something, or you need your own private space, you need to create that somehow. And if you're in a group context, we also want to be mindful of the other people, so not letting our own experience sort of overshadow anybody else's experience. Okay, so that's all I can think of as the main things at the moment, but it's a kind of extensive list of things to just ground rules. So I shall keep adding those as I come along them. Okay, so thank you. Enjoy.